Welcome everyone to another live version of Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure, this time recorded on the Tom Colohue YouTube channel. You're joining myself, Tom Colohue, and also introducing my colleague, Nick Barbati. Nick, how are you doing?
It's Bellies Out Wednesday!
Is that a thing, or is it just a thing for dogs? Because I don't want to do that.
Well, I don't want to see your belly out on a Wednesday, but Tom, I am here. I'm happy to be here live with Lakota, who I've talked to you all so much about. It's if we get to see her. She looks like a little teddy bear. This is my baby, and we get to talk wrestling for you. An updated look at Crown Jewel this week. There's a lot going on. Very, very exciting time. Very, very exciting time.
It is a very exciting time. We have a lot of wrestling that's constantly going on in the world. And yeah, while I may not enjoy personally watching the Saudi shows, that doesn't change the fact that sometimes they have quite good cards put together. There's been some okay highlights on the Saudi shows. Bray Wyatt defeating Seth Rollins to win the Universal Championship stands out to me. There's also been some lowlights. The days of Undertaker and Goldberg, Undertaker and Kane versus Triple H and Shawn Michaels. It's a bit of a crazy world, the Saudi Arabian world, but we're going to have a little bit of a mailbag as regards Crown Jewel and, of course, any questions that you may have. We are live on the Tom Colohue channel, recorded if you're hearing this via Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure on the PW Torch website and podcast channels. I want to say a quick hi to everyone who is currently joining us, and I'm going to start, as always, by asking a simple question. Nick, are you excited for Crown Jewel?
You just asked me this last week.
And I ask you it again.
Well, Tom, am I excited is, I think, how I started off the answer last time. Yes and no. You know, there are portions of this card and portions of the experience that I get excited for, but I wouldn't say I get excited for any of the shows that are emanating live from Saudi Arabia. And I would say that's not so much a political hot take as it is their presentation has always been a bit awkward to me. It's never felt like something that has been all that organic compared to, say, when Money in the Bank, it was taking place outside of the United States. It doesn't seem like that. There seems to always just be an extra emphasis on the difference of the shows that are taking place in Saudi Arabia, and I would argue a less organic feel. So for me, I think it's been okay. There's been no great Saudi Arabia show that I have loved over the years. So my excitement level is definitely tempered compared to some of the other great shows here.
I can understand that. We're getting a couple of comments in. James, I'm not going to read your comment out because it would then be on the recording for Nick and Tom's on PW Torch. It is a question about a quite sensitive topic. So all I'm going to say is that Sami Zayn is a free-thinking individual and nobody can ban him from talking about things. Temple Blaze also says, evening, Tom and Nick. Hope you're doing well. Eric Douglas saying hi, Tom and Nick as well. Please do get any questions you have in. For me, the Saudi Arabia shows are disappointing, and I think historically they have been. They always felt like house shows to start with. We opened the first Saudi Arabia show, I believe, with John Cena versus Triple H, the last match that John Cena actually won way back when. It was the greatest Royal Rumble, Braun Strowman picking up the win. It felt like a big deal, but also it really didn't, because it just felt like a glorified house show. It felt like it didn't have any actual stakes. It felt like they were competing for a championship that would quickly vanish. And it did. The Saudi Arabian Championship does actually exist. It was won at the greatest Royal Rumble and has not been seen since. That has given way lately, particularly when the women started to appear on the card, to genuinely quite exciting cards. And moments when I think maybe I should be checking this out, even though I'm not going to. When we had Edge versus Seth Hell in a Cell, for example, Bobby Lashley versus, I believe it was Goldberg. That's actually very well regarded by a lot of people who follow this channel. I really have heard a lot of great things about it. Personally, when it comes to the Saudi shows, I'm not going to watch them. It's my own personal little protest. Pardon me. I've discussed this at length on the channel before, so I won't really go into it. But what I will say is that my excitement for hearing about the results is a lot higher than it used to be when it comes to some of the matches that we've had. I feel I have missed out a little bit when it comes to Becky versus Sasha versus Bianca, for example. And there are a lot of good matches that I may have missed out on. Logan Paul versus Roman Reigns certainly had that appeal to it. And Logan Paul, of course, returning to competing in Crown Jewel. So,
Tom, I'm going to interject for 1 second. Give me 5 seconds. I'll be right back. You keep going, okay?
Absolutely.
I lost the dog.
You lost the dog. So I have difficulty getting hyped up for things like Crown Jewel. For me, it's not something I'm going to be excited by, especially when we have the possibility of War Games incoming. That said, I do feel if you take the Saudi out of it, this would be a great card, one worth watching. Seth versus Drew certainly jumps out. LA Knight has got that fan service element to him, and he's doing a lot of good stuff with a lot of crowd support right now. And Io Sky versus Bianca Belair is a guarantee of quality, as we've already seen it. So the card itself, divorced of that, I do think has a lot of quality going. Daz says, evening, Tom and Nick. Nick is asking if you're a Sami Zayn fan. Sorry, you're Nick. Eric is asking if you're a Sami Zayn fan.
Well, I'm an appreciator of Sami Zayn. So would I call myself a fan? Not necessarily. I've been a fan of his work. And I think, when we look back at the Bloodline storyline in particular, this is going to be one that I think history is going to be very, very kind to Sami Zayn. It's not only just being a strong player in the WWE universe, but a strong key, tent pole to what is going to be seen as one of the greatest storylines of all time. So I'm a major appreciator, which, by the way, I think is actually a higher compliment than calling myself a fan of this.
I think that's a very fair assessment of it. Sami Zayn will have moments that will live for a very, very long time. I think the Bloodline is his pinnacle so far, but he does have many years ahead of him and more to look forward to. You get great character acting, you get great wrestling. That's everything you really need for me.
Yeah.
Christoph, a name you may be familiar with, says, my favorite duo in wrestling is back live in YouTube. Good evening from Germany. And also says, and don't worry, Wade, we listen to them on PW Torch too.
Well, that's good. Tom, who's the favorite duo? It's certainly not me and you.
It is me and you. See, Christoph actually migrated to the channel because of Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure on PW Torch. In fact, there is quite a few people in the channel who listened to Nick and Tom's, or at least briefly listened to Nick and Tom's, and found the channel because of that. There is quite a strong audience here, including Brian Alston, who's just joined us, saying hello, Nick and Tom, and have a great show. So
I'm upset with Brian Austin. Well, by the way, Christoph, I appreciate you. Let's do lunch. Brian Austin, I literally haven't heard from you. Like every other jilted date I've ever been on.
Eric says,
Tom, can I tell you what your accent is annoying me today?
Mine?
Yes. Did you ever listen on YouTube to the vocal critic?
No.
Oh, she's annoying, Tom. And she thinks who she is, goes up there and will play music, like a live performance, and then grade it as it goes along. Okay. Tom, let me tell you something. She don't want anyone grading her.
Okay.
And she shares an accent with you. That's all I'm saying.
Lovely. So you hate the British. That's what I hear. Eric says, Tom and Nick, are you getting sick and tired of Sammy and Cody or Jay or all three against Judgment Day? Now, this is a pairing we're seeing a lot of, and certainly in my channels, it's getting a lot of dislike because of how repetitive it's been. This has been going since May when we started building towards Cody versus Dominic Mysterio in the midst of the Brock Lesnar feud. Take it away, Nick.
Yeah, it's being paced as a late 80s, early 90s WWF feud in a current WWE every week, multiple shows era. And that's why it's so frustrating, is they're playing this long game to say, if we get to Jay versus Jimmy, say at WrestleMania, think about how much of a quicksand walk that feels like. Yeah. But they are pacing things out literally that far out. And I'm not saying we necessarily are going to get that match at WrestleMania, but I think it's a real possibility. And I think, I agree with you. I wouldn't use the word necessarily stale, but there's a repetitiveness that feels like they don't know where they're going. When actually, I think it's the opposite. They know where they're going. They just didn't realize how much time they had to fill in the meantime. Yeah. And that's not fun to watch.
I would agree with that. It definitely feels like we're heading towards Jay versus Jimmy. We're not really sure what's happening with Cody yet, though Roman seems a distinct possibility. Sammy seems a little bit without direction at the moment. But Judgment Day have been key to everything going on Raw, at times key to everything going on SmackDown. We're just seeing the same thing again and again. And while I'm not particularly excited for Jay versus Jimmy, I would like it to just sort of happen and get out of the way now so we could move on to bigger and better, as it were. I feel this is Jay coming down to Jimmy's level rather than Jimmy going up to Jay's, if you get
I totally agree with you, Tom.
Ray says, Crown Jewel is on the same day as my birthday. Happy birthday for in a couple of days, Ray. Temple Play says, I don't watch the Saudi shows, but it's great for WWE for its Indian market and the money side of things. Boxing and other sports do the same, so I get why they go there. I certainly do understand the financial aspect of what they're choosing to do. I certainly understand the aspect of reaching out to a new group of fans. The work they did with Jinder Mahal, the return of Rey Mysterio, Bad Bunny. We did see certain demographics of certain fan bases spending more time with WWE. I think Logan Paul also is a factor for that. I just don't personally enjoy it. Daz says the question we always get whenever we do one of these shows: do you think we will see any surprises at Crown Jewel?
Well, it depends what we're calling surprises. I feel like that means returns or debuts.
That is typically what he's referring to, yes.
No, I think that there's a very strong possibility of a cash-in for Money in the Bank.
We talked a little bit about this on Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure last week. If you haven't checked that out, it's on the Daily Cast. It is up for free on the PW Torch website. You can check it out there every single week if you enjoy content like this. We did talk about the possibility, and I was not seeing a cash-in. I did not believe we would see a cash-in, primarily because my personal opinion is that we're going to see Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre open the show. But that does potentially lead, if there is a cash-in, to Cody Rhodes leaving with the belt, because he has a match against Damian Priest. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. It really will.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're going to go that far. I've said before, I think we're going to see Damian Priest lose to Cody Rhodes and then come back and cash in later.
You have mentioned that, yeah, and I do think.
And Tom, I've been getting these things right a little bit more and more.
Is he going to say it? You're going to say a catchphrase?
I'm a little witchy.
Oh, we need to get merch. We need to talk to Wade and get merch. I'm a little witchy tease.
Can you imagine?
Sell so much at Halloween, yes. The original, and still your best work, by the way.
Can you imagine?
It's All About Timing was also one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Though that can't be attributed to you, of course.
Jerry Vardis.
Now, typically when someone asks, do you think we'll see any surprises? I always say the same thing. Yes, the match results. They're going to be a surprise because the future has not yet happened.
What a dumb answer.
People love it. I'm British. I have sarcasm. Just let it happen. Richard Martinez says, hello, Tom. Has WWE's recent booking, does it signal a Sami Zayn Rumble win and title victory at WrestleMania 40? No.
No, it does not.
Yeah, it's the best way I can possibly answer that. There seems to be absolutely nothing indicating Sami Zayn will be involved in and around the World Championship immediately after losing at Elimination Chamber. That seemed set in stone. To be fair, before Elimination Chamber, when we were building towards the Cody win, it still didn't feel like Sami Zayn was getting a push to the big time. Chris Best says, good evening, Tom and Nick. Welcome, Chris. Now, Brian says, Nick, your significant other and puppy are taking away our quality time together.
Oh, is that right? Well, I don't see how Lakota and Mario are harming anybody's wrestling listening experience, unless it's just made me happier or more angry. One of the two, depending on which one's doing what at that particular moment. But Lakota is not a big wrestling fan. She did not enjoy when I loaded up Peacock this past weekend. She didn't love that. So, we're getting through it. Mario doesn't quite get it either, but that's okay. Tom, one thing I do want to talk about was that one of the big debates in this house is, do we go to WrestleMania?
Ooh, okay.
And we're going back and forth. I'm not going. And here's why. It's these live shows, these big live shows, which of course Crown Jewel is, to wrap it around to why we're here today, is, they are not to me as special as they once were because we're at so many of these stadium shows. And it's not that, that every match card is the same on all of those shows, but there is the majesty of being there for the large trusses and the big, lights and the major entrances and all that kind of stuff that I do think can sometimes feel like a come down when it comes to WrestleMania. That makes it not as novel when you're talking about the fireworks displays and all of that, even the theme songs associated with them. More than that, though, I still maintain that the 2-night WrestleMania is important to not, overwhelm the experience. But I also think night 2 of WrestleMania is really WrestleMania, but it's also the second time you're seeing everything now.
Yeah.
So as a consumer, I'm saving my money for my Chinese food and sitting at home. And now Tom, thank you for asking what I think the main events of WrestleMania are going to be, which I think at this point we should now be talking about. I do believe we're going to see Cody versus Roman. I think that is going to happen. I think that'll be the night 2 main event of WrestleMania. And it's also still to me personally not a match that's going to get me in the stadium personally. Night 1, I think you're starting to look at various things. Does WWE try introducing a women's main event? I don't see it necessarily. I don't. There's nothing that is, I think, standing out to me unless it's a Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch. I think that might be the only match currently that they have in their arsenal that could do it. Do we do a Jimmy versus Jay finale? And is that adequate? I would argue no. But it's almost like if you don't do it in the main event, does it then fit the Hardy Boys WrestleMania 25 spot, which is what a come down from what you would have expected. What are you thinking, Tom? What could be a suitable night 1 main event if we both agree that Cody versus Roman is a real possibility for night 2?
Which I do. I definitely agree that seems to be the main event of WrestleMania. I would go Becky versus Rhea Ripley. I do feel that's top draw worthy, and I feel after last year, when we came very close to Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley being the main event, they have shown repeatedly what they can do. They've shown that they are fully deserving of that spot. And I feel it continues a full-scale elevation for Rhea Ripley, really taking her to the very top level alongside a Bianca Belair and alongside the remaining horsewomen, that being Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, etc. I don't necessarily think Io Sky is going to be in that spot. And when you go further, it does become Jimmy versus Jay, maybe. Is Seth Rollins still going to be the world heavyweight champion at that time? Would he be in that spot? It depends who he'd be up against. So it's hard to say that there's a top-level opponent ready-made on Raw for him outside of maybe Gunter, who I don't feel would get the main event.
Yeah.
So I think by extension, it kind of has to be Becky versus Rhea Ripley, and I'd be very happy with that as a main event, to be fair.
Yeah, I think it feels like the biggest possible match that they have for the women that would be accepted as a main event. At this point, we've seen Charlotte Flair matches rejected left, right, and center as main events for major shows. Sorry, we're crying over here now. But and I think anything beyond outside of Becky versus Rhea, I think you're going to be met with cynicism. You're going to be met with some level of resentment. I think that's the match to go with.
Just on your point about stadium shows and things like that, personally, I still haven't experienced too much when it comes to the overall spectacle of WWE. I've gone to every NXT UK takeover. Those were good shows, but they certainly weren't to the spectacle of main roster and WrestleMania level. I very much did enjoy AEW at Wembley, even though I'm not a regular watcher of AEW. The spectacle, the showmanship of it all, the pageantry, that's the word I was looking for. The pageantry of it all I really enjoyed. And as a wrestling fan who isn't US based, my access is limited. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't at some point try and get myself to a WrestleMania, because that's essentially the holy pilgrimage for wrestling fans, surely.
Where would you want to see a WrestleMania? Like where, if you, outside of, London or whatever, if you could travel anywhere, where is WrestleMania as a location for you?
I think if you're going to watch WrestleMania, you kind of have to watch WrestleMania in the US. So I definitely want to go to one of the big cities, like, for example, New York, as an opportunity there. Dallas seems to get a lot of love when it comes to wrestling and WrestleMania, etc. Hey, take me to Orlando. I've been there. I absolutely loved it. Florida man can join me. Yes, I see that face. But hey, I've been to Florida. I enjoyed it there. So I can't complain about that as a concept. So
I would want to see the Miami.
Miami's probably a good shout. I didn't get to Miami in my time in Florida. To catch up with the chat, Daniela says, good evening, Nick and Tom. Welcome, Daniela. Keyshawn says, is it true AEW is turning Rampage to an all-women's show? Keyshawn, you know the rules. I am going to need to know your source here, because that is going to determine the answer. If the source is, I read it on Twitter, I'm immediately going to dismiss it. If the source is a number of different outlets which don't have a name or a face behind them, I'll probably also dismiss it. Let me know who your source is, and then we can potentially talk about it or completely ignore it.
Well, let's talk about it as a possibility, Tom. Is this something that you think they're prepared for in AEW right now?
No. I think the women's division, unfortunately, cannot fill a show despite the amount of people they've got involved with the women's division. They don't push the women. Historically, they do not have many high-level women because they don't push the women. So they don't have the infrastructure required in order to make that happen.
All right.
You wanted to talk about it. What do you think?
Well, I think AEW is in a position where they've got to do something drastic. And,
I agree.
in many ways, if it's what the catalyst to push them to get the women's division where it needs to be, maybe that's what they need. Maybe that is the holding them to the fire to actually get them to create a quality division. What the women's work that I've seen in AEW was laughable, but it was also in the earliest stages of the organization. And all I know at this point is, the shining star that they had is now firmly in WWE. So I know that, but I know that that's a half-baked, not even half-baked, quarter-baked, opinion. I just don't know that there is some great perception that there's a whole lot of momentum in the AEW women's division.
My concern, as much as anything, is what we're talking about here is turning the least watched AEW show into the women's show, and that would necessitate taking the women off the shows that people actually watch.
Yeah.
It's the 205 Live effect.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
guaranteeing that people won't get to a level where people are tuning in to watch them by putting them on a show that nobody's tuning in to watch.
Right.
Which is why I immediately don't quite believe it. Dad says, which legends do you think will be in the Rumble? Is there anyone in particular who you'd like to see in the Royal Rumble this year?
Oh, gosh. Let's see. That is, can I tell you a woman legend that I would like to see in?
Do it.
It'll never happen. Tori, who was the DX Tori. Do you remember her, Tom? She went up against Sable at WrestleMania 15, I believe 15. It was. I loved her in DX, and I always felt sad with how her career ended. She had this shoulder injury at WrestleMania 2000 that then took her out of the DX storyline. Then she came back as like X-Pac Ninja, and she was unmasked and then never seen again. She was a really, really talented, character, even though she was like positioned at the time as being like a wrestler. I really felt like she did great work as the side manager for DX. I would like to see her come back at some point.
My concern is at the moment that a lot of the legends who you would normally be picking from are actively wrestling in other promotions now. Sting, right, for example, would have been someone you'd look at as maybe popping into a Royal Rumble. Now he's feeling fit and ready to go, but he's been wrestling in AEW for a while. So right. I don't feel there's honestly that many people who are available who can also still wrestle actively. You'd be looking at maybe a Bubba Ray or a Devon Dudley at this point, but even they are actively signed elsewhere. I would love to see Ken Shamrock.
Oh, Ken Shamrock would be good.
Absolutely love to see Ken Shamrock.
I don't know that we're ever going to see him back, though.
I don't think we will. But it would be fun.
Yeah, there you go.
Richard believes Logan Paul and Rey Mysterio will open the show for Crown Jewel. I think that might be based on SummerSlam when Logan Paul opened the show so he could go to a boxing match afterwards.
Right.
Keyshawn says, who's very keen on AEW today, are the Bucks still a draw for AEW? Yeah, I reckon so. The Young Bucks certainly were a key part of establishing AEW, but it depends what you define as a draw. The ratings are sinking at the moment, so it's hard to say who's a draw and who isn't.
Well, let me answer this because I know Brian Austin's probably somewhere losing his mind that we're talking about AEW. Let me say this. Would any of them going to WWE make a tremendous difference? Okay, that is, I think, the real relevant question, because I don't think, CM Punk going back to WWE make much of a difference. I don't think, at this point, even the Young Bucks, I think they've lost major steam over the past few years. So they're not going in a main event in WrestleMania, Tom.
They're not. There's a couple of names who I do think would make an impact, primarily talking about people who haven't wrestled in WWE, Kenny Omega, MJF. Yeah. I do feel they'd be the ones. After that, it's mostly returns. Adam Cole would make a big impact. Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley certainly would be the one for me to make the biggest impact. But at this point, it's hard to pinpoint the draws when, unfortunately, Edge went to AEW and we didn't see any sort of bounce.
What do you think about that? If you're him, what are you thinking right now?
I would hope that he went over there not expecting a big reaction from the crowds and a big reaction. Well, I don't mean crowds. A big reaction from the viewing audience, a big reaction from the draws, a big reaction from the media, etc. I would imagine and hope that he went over there for himself.
Yeah.
I feel it's one of those where if this is upsetting him, he did it for the wrong reasons. If you understand what I mean.
Well, I think, it's hard to not be moved by the images of him performing in front of empty seats. Now, there are, a lot of times in WWE's history where wrestlers have performed in front of empty seats. So that I wouldn't really, I don't know that's a unique knock to AEW, but as legends, there's choices to make. How do you want to be remembered? And do you want last chances of legacy? I've said this openly that Chris Jericho going to AEW has harmed my view of him as a fan, in that I'm unwilling to watch this later stage of his career on a weekly basis. And yet before, if Chris Jericho was on a main event of any show, it could have been A, B, C, D level, and I'm ordering it. So there is ultimately, I would say, with all of these wrestlers, more of a link to brand loyalty of what you are in the tradition of watching, what you're familiar with watching, and also what you can expect to see when you watch. It may not be good, but you still know what you're going to get. And I think that AEW never quite shattered that. And if you're a person like myself, or Cousin Rocco, who I always talk about, big Edge fan, he's not tuning into AEW. He's not. There's a bridge there that's just not connecting.
I get what you're saying. Roger Sims says, what do you think will be Tony Khan's big announcement on AEW Dynamite tonight? I'm going to be completely honest on this one. When this goes to PW Torch, it will, of course, be after that fact as a version of Nick and Tom's on the Daily Cast. Tony Khan habitually has, quote-unquote, big announcements whenever the ratings start to drop. And he's been very open about the fact that he often doesn't know what the big announcements are going to be when he announces them.
Oh, that's so WCW. Oh, my gosh.
Riyadh says, hey, Tom and Nick, first time watching Intercontinental Adventure. Hope it's a good one. Well, Riyadh, you can let us know what you think. We'd be very welcoming of that. Whether you think this is a good one and worth checking out, you can check it out more here. We are planning more of these preview shows and these mailbag shows in the build-up to the pay-per-views as they come in, or premium live events, I should say. And, of course, you can check us out on the Daily Cast every week on PW Torch.
Tom, I don't know what more we can go. I showed him the dog. I've shown him bare bellies. Here, I'll show you the boyfriend. Here, he's right here. What more do you people want? I'm giving the world everybody.
For those who don't know, Nick is a very, very open person who will tell you exactly where he is and what he's doing.
Lawrenceville.
And it winds me up. Anyway, Jack says, how does Cody get to SmackDown? Because Triple H said no Raw wrestler can hold the SmackDown title and vice versa. So how is Cody fighting for the SmackDown title? Of course, we've been talking about the main event of WrestleMania being Cody Rhodes, a Raw wrestler, versus Roman Reigns, a SmackDown wrestler. There seems to be only one option, surely.
Well, you mean the Royal Rumble is what you're talking about. I mean
the Royal Rumble.
Well, but that's also giving them a lot of storyline credit that they're going to stick to what they said this week. When, I'm sorry, they could have a ham sandwich and suddenly change that perception, everyone. We know better than this. There are twists and turns all over the place. I would say the canary in the coal mine was the trade that was introduced a couple months ago. I think that was done with Cody Rhodes as a link because we're going to see a trade happen further down the line. Whereas Cody Rhodes wasn't just the initiator of the trade. He was the participant in the trade. That is what I believe we're going to see. I think there was a very clear reason why he was involved in that. It was to set the brain in motion that Cody could be traded over back to the brand where Roman Reigns is. And I think that's what you can expect. I don't anticipate Cody Rhodes to win the Royal Rumble 2 years in a row. I think that would be going a bridge too far in terms of asking the fans to be excited for someone who is winning a lot when that's just not natural human behavior. But, we'll see.
I think there's a few options. Certainly the lines are beginning to blur a little bit with Jimmy Uso appearing on Raw, Jey Uso coming to SmackDown, etc., even without the tag team championships being involved. I agree with you. I do feel like the rules can be changed at any moment, and I feel like they're going to change them. Daniel Berry says, yo, welcome, Daniel. Eddie Gomez says, a feud of GMs will lead to Aldis versus Pierce at WrestleMania 40. That is apparently a question. Do you think we will see Nick Aldis versus Adam Pearce at WrestleMania 40?
It's hard to say. There's 2 nights of WrestleMania, which does leave, openings for some crazy. I mean, keep in mind, this is the same company that 23 years ago or 22 years ago had the Invasion pay-per-view, and they wasted time with Earl Hebner versus Nick Patrick on the card. They do tend to like those kind of things, even though that's a very, very long time ago. There's the novelty there. What I would, I don't think we're going to get that match. What I will say is I think you will see people representing them, and I think could see something like that. I don't also necessarily see WrestleMania as that spot. I think you could get to a midsummer pay-per-view card in which there's, an invasion style 5-on-5 or something along those lines. But yeah, I don't think we're rushing towards that match.
I agree with that. I could definitely see Nick Aldis wrestling. I think the Royal Rumble is a good vehicle for him to step into the ring and sort of never leave.
Yeah.
I don't see Adam Pearce wrestling.
Right.
I just don't personally see it. Chris Best has invited us to go to Canada and watch WrestleMania. Always appreciate it, Chris. Always enjoy the hospitality. And Ed has joined us and said, hey, look, Nick's here. Also, hi, Tom. Cheers, mate.
He missed the bellies, the dog, and the boyfriend.
He will rewind.
Oh, okay.
He will rewind to see the dog. And to be clear, you should. It's a very, very cute dog. She's a beautiful little pup.
Thank you.
Daniela says, what do you guys think is happening with Jade Cargill? It's taking a little while for her to settle on one brand and get started. Now, I've shared my opinion on the channel. Nick, what do you think is going on with Jade Cargill at the moment, and where do you think she will land as regards a brand?
Well, I think it should take her some time. I think the more mystique they can keep on her, the better. Now, it doesn't mean you keep this going on for a year, but you keep it on for a while, in which making sure that everybody who's watching has seen her. And they're doing the mystique around her physique, which is super impressive, and trying to get everything. They've built her up as, she's got fabulous attire, really tremendous look, the physique out of this world. They're checking off all the boxes that you as a wrestling viewer would want to see. I think there is going to be a time where the audience is going to be tired and say, like, okay, it's time to get her in the ring. And I think we're maybe heading there, but for the time period, I think they've got to make a determination on where is the big build to. I would have said initially, I would have been excited for Charlotte Flair. I don't know that it's there. I think her versus Bianca is where it's at.
I would say so. That seems to be what they've been building towards. And I do feel it'd be kind of a wasted effort because they've made a lot of headway into that feud. But I do feel like Jay and Jimmy, they didn't realize how long they had.
Yeah.
It is starting to feel that way. Eddie says, without Roman at Survivor Series, do you think Punk has more chance to appear? No.
Tom, do you think he has any chance of coming back?
No. None whatsoever.
Okay. I agree. But, I'm starting to get like, what do they call that? Gaslit?
Yeah.
That we're like, I'm like, wait a minute. Am I crazy that I think that it would be crazy for them to bring him back? There's no upside to bringing him back.
None whatsoever. I don't understand the appeal, particularly of him coming back to WWE, where he's already burnt those bridges. After leaving AEW, where he burnt those bridges, the man is a flight risk. I don't think they want flight risks.
Yeah,
For
why
me,
would they
it's that
want
simple?
that?
Triple H in particular would not. I think as much as anything, Vince McMahon would have chosen the money over the risk. I think Triple H would rather have a happy locker room.
Yeah, and I also don't know that there's that much money there.
I would say so. Yeah.
There's no new money. Let me say that.
It would be appealing to the exact same fans
that they already have.
It would just be the same couple of people who tune in to see CM Punk. And don't get me wrong, there are quite a lot of people who would tune in just to see CM Punk. I don't think those are the fans they want.
Right.
Because if you're tuning in just to see CM Punk, you're not going to tune in for anyone else.
Yeah, and you're not going to stay.
You're not going to stay. As regards Royal Rumble, we have a couple of people. Keyshawn would also like to see Ken Shamrock, and Zane Charles says, I'd like to see Hornswoggle. We always get a mention of Hornswoggle.
Oh, God.
Always get a mention of Hornswoggle.
Get a girlfriend.
Wow. Chris says, Adam Copeland going to AEW was the worst kept secret. I wouldn't go that far, but you've got to consider we now live in an age where everything is basically public information. The amount of news about wrestling that gets leaked, it is inescapable at the moment. Inescapable. You almost accidentally know everything that's going to happen, essentially.
Yeah.
Eddie said, any update on who Jade Cargill will face at WrestleMania? We don't know at this point in time. I don't think the WWE is certain as of yet. We don't even know what brand she's going to be on, so there's no update we can really give. Keyshawn suggested Nick Aldis versus either a KO or an Austin Theory. I think Kevin Owens is a good shout. He's been brought over to SmackDown in that group, and I do feel when it comes to the promos, they would work extremely well together.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Keyshawn's also asking, do you see DIY getting a tag title match in the near future? I do not.
I see them winning the championship.
Wow, that's a very big difference between us. I'll lay out mine.
And very soon, actually.
So for me, there is the top level champions where Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn were, Judgment Day were, where Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes were. Then there is a gap. Then there is a Street Profits. Then there is a gap. 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 Then there is everyone else. I just see so much distance between all of those tag teams and the actual championships. That's what I think. Nick, what do you think?
I think when WWE has had singles acts that they put as tag team champions, they inevitably reverse course and go back to a traditional tag team to be the champions. I think that I just feel like it's going to happen before the end of the year, or at least before Royal Rumble for sure. But I think DIY will be the tag team champions soon enough.
Well, you are the witchy one, so we'll see how that plays out.
I think it's going to be very soon, Tom.
Chris says Punk has become way, way, way too toxic. I don't think he's become that. I think he was born that. Daniela says Akira Tozawa has joined Alpha Academy, is being featured on Raw every week. Now, this is a change that we've seen. Alpha Academy is actively growing. We've seen Maxine Dupree added. We've seen Akira Tozawa added. We've seen them all get a lot more airtime because of it. And this basically started because of the Chad Gable versus Gunter feud. These factions that we're seeing be built up under Triple H are getting a lot more people on TV, but it's difficult to say that people are standing out in the same way as they would if they were singles wrestlers. Do you prefer the more faction-based system that we have now, Nick, or did you prefer a little bit more of the singles wrestlers and the rotation that we got under Vince McMahon?
I like the faction-based thing. It to me, it's from a storyline perspective, things just make more sense when there's actually friends in this thing. Like that's how we as humans conduct our lives, is typically in groups and having worlds that exist outside of just as individuals, and that's the narrative storytelling that WWE tells. They've had tremendous success with Judgment Day, tremendous success with Bloodline, even Damage Control. Why not? I think that by and large the booking success under Triple H, it speaks for itself when it comes to the approach.
I would agree with that. I'm definitely keen on the idea of having these factions. People like Dakota Kai, even though she's injured, is still featured regularly on TV. That's a huge benefit. The Street Profits have a new lease of life. And I do feel that the year of Judgment Day that we have, I'm really quite enjoying it. I do feel that Judgment Day have well deserved this spot, and they've been a real bright spark in the Raw viewing habits, as it were. Now, Bossman says, is Randy Orton going against Shinsuke Nakamura at Survivor Series? Now, I need to put some context into this.
Mm-hmm.
There are reports out there stating that Randy Orton will be returning in time for Survivor Series. I believe the latest report originated from Fightful Select. There is plenty more information as regards Randy Orton on this here channel. If you're familiar with the Tom Colliehue YouTube channel, you'll know the videos I'm talking about. By all means, check them out. It's very distracting having a dog wandering around behind you when it's so... Look. Anyway. Randy Orton is apparently... Okay, fun. Randy Orton is apparently set to return. I think he's more likely to return at Survivor Series and not immediately be returning into a wrestling situation. Do you think we'll be seeing Randy Orton soon?
Yes, and I think he'll be going up against Shinsuke Nakamura.
Oh, you think that's exactly what's going to happen?
I do. I think there is a level of WWE playing into the CM Punk stuff, and I also think though Randy Orton is more than a suitable replacement.
Robin Dave LP says, "Hey Tom, how would you bring in Randy Orton at Survivor Series?" I like that we've basically both laid out our opinions on that. I wouldn't bring him in for an immediate match. I'm going to be a little bit nervous for a while, given the scale of injury that Randy Orton reportedly suffered. I was also very nervous when we saw Paige return, when we saw Daniel Bryan return, when we saw Edge return. I get nervous around some of these big injuries.
Tom, I'm going to have to go. I have a dog losing her mind over here. Can you close us out and finish up? I apologize.
I can close that and finish off. That's fine. I'm going to read one last comment. Sean Plister saying, "Hey guys, sorry I'm so late on vacation, but you guys are the best." We will get to some of your questions. I'll take note of them and make sure that we're able to read some out in future Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventures. Apologies for cutting it short, but I'm sure you understand. In the meantime, this has been Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure on the Tom Colliehue YouTube channel and Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure on the PW Torch Dailycast. I've been Tom Colliehue. He's been Nick Barbati. Thank you very much for watching and good night.
I'm so sorry, Tom. Her bladder's going to explode. I think I got.